All right, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and today we're going over the season finale of Book of Boba Fett. We're not sure if this is the end of Book of Boba Fett. It's been advertised as a limited series, but I know there's rumors about a season 2, but personally, I think this is the end. I don't think it's the last we see of Boba Fett and Fennec in this universe, but I think this is the end of Book of Boba Fett, the series. And the finale overall was fun. There were some good to great moments in it, but I think everyone agreed that the action was a little bit lackluster in this episode. And I think a big piece of that was the lack of emotional investment in the conflict. Action sequences can be great with awesome choreography, unique fighting styles, all this stuff contributes to a great action scene, but I think what makes those scenes even better is when there's a huge emotional investment in them. So even if the action itself is not as cool or flashy, if there's an investment in the characters from the audience, it's going to elevate it exponentially. I'll just use Star Wars as an example. In A New Hope, obviously that fight between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan is very slow, not very acrobatic, but there's an investment in it because Obi-Wan is protecting Luke and giving him a chance to get away. Also, this is a master and apprentice meeting together after so many years. In this episode, there's this huge battle that they're building up that they got to defend Mos Espa. This place that I personally don't feel very invested in, and I think a lot of people could probably agree with that. Aside from the detonation of the casino, we don't really see how the Pykes are affecting the city itself and why we so need to protect it with all of our might. I think the real problem where this stems from is that the previous 2 episodes did not focus on the Tatooine conflict. They did a diversion to the Mando Season 3 arc. And like I said in my previous 2 reviews, when you divert from this main plot, it's very jarring to go back and act like we're supposed to care as much as we did maybe in episode 4 before the diversion. I think the previous 2 episodes should have continued to flesh out this conflict on Tatooine. How are the Pykes really lowering the quality of life in Mos Espa? The only times we really see the people of Mos Espa suffering is the hipster cyberpunk gang in the beginning when they said there's no jobs and water prices are exploitive for regular citizens. And then we never really hear from the hipsters again. They kind of just follow Boba Fett's orders. It would be so cool if they had these conversations with Boba Fett, like, this is what it's like, this is what we're seeing, these are how people are suffering. Especially in this episode when Boba Fett even says a line like, the spice that the Pykes are running is ruining people's lives, it's killing the people of Mos Espa. Why don't you show that? Wouldn't that be so much more impactful to see that this spice is degrading the community? Wouldn't that make the defense of Mos Espa so much more engaging? Because you're like, wow, if they don't do this, then the Pykes are literally going to ruin not just this city, but this whole planet. I just think the last 2 episodes, while I appreciated the end with Cad Bane in the last one, getting back into the Tatooine arc, I think they could have benefited a lot from digging into this society a lot more. You know, why are the water prices high? Is this corruption widespread? Are the Pykes destroying other pieces of the community? I mean, to be honest, they blew up the casino, which is a familiar place for us because it's shown throughout the season. But the casino is the high class of society. Only the highest class people are going to be in there. So destroying that, it doesn't really affect most of the everyday people in Mos Espa, which is the majority of people. If you wanted to strike fear and make Mos Espa feel like real danger for these everyday people, they should have been doing different scare tactics for these people. They should have attacked civilian targets. It should show them strong-arming businesses to let them deal spice out of their places. All these things to make this conflict and this looming threat of the Pykes taking over that much more investing on our end as an audience. But when you do only these little hints and then you drop these one-off lines about, oh, this place is suffering, and then you take a 2-week diversion and then you come back and you're supposed to see this defense of Mos Espa as this big built-up thing throughout the whole season, it kind of falls flat. So even if the action was incredible, the investment isn't really there from the audience. And if you don't have the investment, it's not going to hit as hard, which is what I'm kind of seeing on the internet about this last episode. The last thing is, of course, the people of Freetown, we know them, but the fact that they're the only ones to rise up and help and not the people of Mos Espa, to fight the Pykes, it feels very odd. It feels like they just shoehorned them in because they were like, hey, the audience knows these people. Remember the Marshal? Wasn't that so cool? Wouldn't it have been so much cooler if even if the folks of Freetown showed up and they were all pinned down? Wouldn't it have been so much cooler to see the people of Mos Espa rebel against the Pykes and all of these people come out and fight the Scorpion tanks with them and just overwhelm them with a mass of people? It would perfectly tie into the Star Wars themes that we're used to of hope, rebellion, fighting back against injustice. I mean, all of this stuff would have come together, but having this rural village, which of course would get affected by the Pykes, but having this rural village come into this big city full of way more people that are probably able-bodied to fight their battle for them, while it's noble and a noble cause for the planet, it just doesn't feel as dire for them because it's not really their town. If the people of Mos Espa were highlighted more and were shown in this finale other than just like screaming when the families turned on everyone, I feel like this battle, even with some of its lackluster choreography, would have at least been more emotionally engaging for us as an audience, and I think it would have landed better overall. So I have other thoughts on the episode. I just think that was my main concern with it and why I think a lot of people aren't as enthralled with it as probably people were expecting. Some other issues I have is the families. Another thing they could have fleshed out, the other crime families, or I don't know if they're crime families or not, but all of them turning on Boba Fett in that scene, even though the scene is really cool. I think the chrysanthemum part with the Trandoshans was very like Julius Caesar-esque and Roman. They all pull out like sharp daggers and stuff and fight them on these like Roman steps. It was pretty cool. I don't know if anyone else made that weird historical connection, but I did. But this scene would have been so much cooler if we didn't already expect it. I mean, did anyone really think that they would hold up that end of the bargain? There was no leverage that Boba Fett had. He kind of just came in and said, listen to me. I haven't proved anything yet, but listen to me, because if we all are neutral, I'll take care of the entire Pike syndicate. Like, of course they would look at him and be like, yeah, okay, sure. We'll say yes, but we're really going to side with them. Imagine if in one of the last episodes we kind of saw that infighting between them, saying, oh, should we stay? Should we join? Maybe some discussions with the Pikes. Maybe Boba Fett trying to quell tensions and all that. And then in this episode, when they do turn, it's almost like more of a shock because some of the families might have been more leaning towards Boba Fett. And you're like, oh my gosh, they all turned. Or maybe one family doesn't turn or something like that. I feel like that also would have been a lot more exciting to watch because then it adds this layer of political intrigue. Like, oh, these chess moves are changing off and on screen. But in the end, it kind of just falls flat because it's like, oh, the families turned? Of course they were going to turn. Why wouldn't they? And Boba Fett even says, oh, yeah, they made the right decision. It's like, what? Well, if you thought they were going to turn, why even expect anything different when it all comes crashing down? I mean, I don't know. I thought that was very odd as well, that I feel like the last two episodes could have fleshed out a bit more. I think the one thing I'll say about the physical action itself, I think it kind of fell into this trap with Star Wars TV shows sometimes that, you know, it's just blaster fire. The enemies are just standing out in the open while the heroes are in cover, and they just slowly dwindle down and down and down, and then more come and bigger enemies. I feel like the choreography with Boba Fett and Mando was super cool and entertaining. There was different levels to the fighting. They were flying. There was people coming around corners. They were using weird gadgets from the knee. I mean, all that stuff was very interesting. But then you have like the mods who have modded bodies. This guy literally has like a new artificial eye. Wouldn't you expect him to be like super accurate with his weapon? Don't you think he would be able to use his eye to just go boom, boom, boom? The girl has the robotic arm. She should be able to do something cool with that. I just feel like they weren't as creative as they could have been with this stuff, and I think that's kind of why it falls short a little. That's why I think that emotional layer would have made up for those shortcomings if you really were invested in this. The really only time I was super invested was, as I said in my premiere thoughts and reaction episode, the Gamorrean guards die in a heroic fashion, and it was so sad. They got back down, and they went off the edge in slow motion, and I was so sad. That was the only time in this episode I was like, oh my gosh, no. This is really a bad conflict on Tatooine. The Gamorrean guards are gone. The Rancor was cool. I liked being able to root for the Rancor for once in Star Wars, but once again, I feel like the last two episodes could have went into Boba Fett training with this Rancor. Really tie us to this Rancor, this beast, and how Boba Fett connected to it. And, of course, see more Danny Trejo. But, you know, this Rancor just shows up fully trained, Boba Fett's already riding it. Of course, cool, but if we had seen more of the Rancor and kind of that bond between them, it would have made the fight more tense with the Scorpion thing, because when the Rancor was getting shot or stabbed or cut, you were tensing up. You're like, no, I don't want him to get hurt. But at this point, it's just like we saw him 3 episodes ago or 4 episodes ago. He shows up in this one. Like, that's kind of it. We just get Boba Fett petting him, and we see the eye contact, and that's really it. I feel like that's another missed opportunity for an emotional connection that would have made the action a lot deeper. So after all that stuff, let's talk about some of the stuff I did like. I think Cad Bane in this episode was written so well. I love that he did this Palpatine-esque play where he kept trying to lure Boba Fett to the non-Force user dark side, letting him fall back into his old habits, telling him, you're a killer, this isn't you, don't look out for anyone else, be a bounty hunter, be selfish, the quintessential dark side Sith teachings, selfishness over selflessness. I thought it was cool because in Star Wars, we're always framed that the Force users are kind of the only ones that have this dark side, light side choice, and they always frame it like that. But it's cool to see everyday people or bounty hunters or soldiers making those light side, dark side decisions. Boba Fett had finally grown. He had new family. He lost his old family, and he's learning to protect people, the people of Mos Espa, even though, like I said, I think they could have made that relationship a little bit better with showing Boba Fett connecting with them. But regardless, the sentiment of the growth of protecting others and finding new family was really good. And seeing Boba Fett kind of make that change with someone that was so ingrained in his past. I mean, we don't get to see those actual cut Clone Wars episodes where Cad Bane and him show off, and Cad Bane shoots him in the helmet, and there's the ding, and then, of course, Cad Bane has that plate on his head from where Boba Fett shot him when they were younger, so it kind of was a nice full circle moment, even though it's not shown. We know that they have this interaction in the past, and I feel like Cad Bane was the perfect dark side, most menacing bounty hunter out there before Boba Fett to want him to come back to their side and be that bounty hunter that Boba was in his old life. Of course, I wasn't happy to see Cad Bane die so quickly after he was brought back, especially how well he was brought back, but I think he needs to stay dead. If he doesn't, Star Wars has now become this franchise that does not let people die. I mean, at this point now, if Cad Bane did come back, it would be Maul, Sidious, Rey, Ben, Boba Fett, Fennec, and I think there are some others, but I'm just going off the top of my head. Star Wars used to be so definitive on its life-death perspective, and if they start moving in this direction that literally no one can die, or people that do die can come back in some way, all those deaths just become less impactful. I think Clone Wars, aside from bringing Maul back, even though that was a beautiful way that they did it and his storyline became amazing, the animated version of Star Wars very much is okay with letting people die, and they aren't afraid or shy away from letting people stay dead. And I really appreciate that because it is one of George Lucas's kind of philosophies from the prequels and the original trilogy. And I don't want it to become a theme that if someone dies, you can't really take it at face value. It just kind of takes you out of the experience and you're expecting them to come back instead of living in that moment like, oh no, we just lost him. Instead, you're like, he can be back, or she can be back. Yeah, so those are my main thoughts for right now. It seems like the Mandoverse shows are kind of just in release date order. So instead of watching shows season to season, you just have to watch them in the order they're released. So Mando's just going to blend into Boba Fett and then season 3. And then who knows if another series comes out like Ahsoka and that blends in and then goes back to Mando. I don't know. But I guess they're just trying a new form of fluid storytelling or something, which I grew to accept, but I do think that, in this episode, Grogu being reunited with Mando is such a crazy moment to have in a show that isn't The Mandalorian. Because now if someone is watching season 2 of Mandalorian and they finish it, and then at the end you see Grogu leave with Luke, and then you don't watch Book of Boba Fett and you go right to season 3. No one told you, you don't have to watch Book of Boba Fett. Maybe you don't know. And you go into season 3 of Mando and the first shot is them together again in a Naboo starfighter. And it's just like, what the hell happened? Wait, where did this come from? So those are the people I really feel bad for, and I don't know how they're going to handle Mando season 3. Who knows if they'll do, I don't think they'll do like flashbacks, but maybe they'll rework the first 3 episodes into stuff we already saw, but add scenes to them or something. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I feel like they have to do some sort of catch up for people that don't watch the Book of Boba Fett. It shouldn't be like required watching. Like in the Marvel shows, obviously they all are very much intertwined with each other, but you can watch Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness this summer. If you didn't watch WandaVision, you can kind of understand, like, okay, Wanda was kind of on this path already. But if you go from just season 2 of Mando to season 3, there was no indication that that's how it would start, because they literally went their separate ways and now they're back together. It's very odd, and I don't think it's as cohesive as it should be. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm going to be having a roundtable discussion with some of my friends about the Book of Boba Fett series as a whole, so you'll get my thoughts on the entire show as one complete package then. I'm really excited for that. That should be really fun, and I'm excited for you guys to hear that. But I definitely want to hear your thoughts on the finale in the comments, or you shoot me a DM. I love, spoiler-free talking as well. You can do that at my Instagram, at @star_wars_mark of balance. Go there for some more content like this. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.